Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. We are back again. We miss you and I hope you miss us because today I have the pleasure of speaking to the father of a league MVP and I guess still the reigning league MVP. It's not Ben Jagt, just his father, Dan Jagt. Dan, thanks so much for joining the show.
Well, Happy New Year, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to you again for joining us, and a Happy New Year as well to all the Empire fans who are with us and AUDL fans at large as well, or just Ultimate fans, whoever's listening to our podcast. We'd say thank you and welcome to, I think, what is the first of what's going to be our new season, if you will, as we gear up for the planned and the proposals of the 2021 AUDL season. We're going to talk about that later. We're not going to bother Mr. Jagt with any of that because we're going to talk basically strictly about Ben Jagt and the relationship between the Empire, the family's relationship with Ultimate, and there's going to be so much good stuff. We won't even have time for that. We'll get to that, I promise, on a later show. So first, Dan, before we even begin to speak about Ben or the family or anything like that, Ben being the second eldest son in the entire Jagt family, but first, I do want to talk about your own athletic career that included high school football, basketball, and track and tennis, all in Minnesota, where you are from. And you could try to be humble here, but I have been told that you were pretty good, especially at football. And if my research is right, the word captain was also thrown around there as well.
Well, Dan, Ben's probably been telling stories out of school, but I had some achievements in high school, small high school, good thing. Played football, played quarterback and safety. Interesting fact about how small our school was. 9 of the 11 starters on offense and defense were the same people, right? We had a couple that started on offense and a couple on defense, and the rest of us went both ways because we were that small. But had a lot of fun playing football. Not terribly gifted athletically, certainly coordinated and all that. I was able to make my place on the team by just having played the game a long time, understanding spacing and timing and the like. So we had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I was the captain of the football team and the basketball team. Our basketball team had a bit more success because we had a couple of 6'7" guys that could play. So we fed them the ball and took the occasional outside shot. But we had a little more success than we had in previous years at our school. But we didn't make the state playoffs. It's sort of my athletic career sort of flamed out officially after high school, but played a lot of intramural sports in college and even while in the military, and had a lot of fun with it. And certainly my kids thought I was so athletic because I could throw the ball farther than them when they were 12. But they, at about 14 or 15, they started to pass me in athletic ability. Certainly Ben has far surpassed any athletic achievements that I might have had or my wife might have had. She was a gymnast growing up and a softball player. And so Ben and the rest of his brothers got some basic athletic ability from their parents and then worked really hard to hone that and become successful in a sport we didn't even know about when we were kids, but I've come to love.
Well, aside from the athletic prowess, the one thing that I can credit you with definitely passing on directly was a competitive nature to 8 kids. I say 8 kids, but for those who know the Jagt family, they know that it is 8 boys as well, which, yes, is a statistical anomaly, but it is 8 boys. Ben is the second oldest of those, and he has told stories about whether it was motorcycles, whether it was 4-wheelers. I would ask for you, what was the challenge and what continues to be the challenge of wrangling 8 different separate competitive spirits and the competitive nature that seems to be infused in your family?
Well, we certainly give them outlets for that competitive nature, and that is very true. I'm competitive in everything I do. Give you a quick story. Before YouTube videos were popular, or TikTok, we would set a water pitcher up in the corner of the kitchen and bounce ping pong balls. See who could bounce a ping pong ball off the countertop and off the wall and into the pitcher. Years ago, when Ben was small, that was one of our favorite activities. Everybody would line up and we'd put that pitcher all around the house and throw ping pong balls at it, seeing who could win. And I used to tell the boys, I suppose, why keep score if it doesn't matter who wins, right? Let's play to win. So our annual Thanksgiving turkey bowl, where we would play touch football, became a huge deal for several years, where we had friends and neighbors and family members join us, and everybody played to win. So yeah, they got that competitive spirit from me, and which can sometimes go negative if we're too competitive. So yeah, I can get some credit for that, but also I might have put a bit too much of that in them at times.
Well, I've also heard that the person that does keep it all together is the best cook in the house, and that is obviously your wife. And not only does she watch the games with you, but I just wanted to speak a little bit about her task, obviously not just in raising 8 boys, but what impact she had on the diet and basically the dietary lifestyle of her children, and how that has helped Ben, obviously, in his time with the Empire.
Yeah, she's obviously an amazing woman that can have eight children, and then deal with them all being boys, and being the only girl in the house. And she's an incredibly kind and sweet woman who loves her sons immensely. To your question about diet, we've had an ongoing battle, she and I, because I'm not a very healthy eater. I love sugary drinks and food, and she just kept hammering the basics of a balanced diet. She's an incredible cook, but more than that, she uses very natural ingredients. She balances them. She has snacks that are healthy alternatives to the stuff I would smuggle in to give to the little boys. And Ben certainly took after her in his just basic eating habits, even around the house before he was playing very high level ultimate and needed to fuel his body in the proper way. He had that mindset. So he's like her, prefers a plate of vegetables over a plate of Pop-Tarts.
So I'm going to pivot almost directly into playing Ultimate and your introduction to Ultimate, that being what was Ben's introduction to Ultimate with the 2014 wind chill of the AUDL. And, you'd assume that it's an unorthodox path, if you will, though the more professional AUDL players you speak to, you do start to realize that some of them did even play club before college, and it isn't necessarily just a high school to college to AUDL path. Obviously, Ben won the 2016 national championship with Minnesota Grey Duck, but prior to that was your introduction into Ultimate with the 2014 wind chill. Was there a moment with the wind chill? And we had talked before about his stats, obviously that season already quite high in goal scoring numbers, blocks as well. But was there a specific moment you can remember with the wind chill when you realized that Ben was going to be special at this sport?
There was, Dan. Actually, towards the end of the year, Ben had a very good rookie season. He had been playing defense, and then they moved him to a more hybrid role. So he was playing some defensive points, but playing some offense as well. And I think it was the second to the last game of the season, the last home game in Minnesota. They were playing Detroit, if I remember correctly, and Ben scored 10 goals to set the wind chill scoring record, when their primary scorer was somebody from a name familiar to real Ultimate fans of 5-6 years ago, James Hron, who still plays at a high level in USAU mixed Ultimate. But James, the lumberjack Hron, scored all the goals for the wind chill until this tall, skinny kid just went off in a game against Detroit and scored 10 goals. And we were excited. We were there and heard the crowd. Knew that he was approaching a record, and so the crowd got behind him, the team got behind him, and both Wendy and I knew at that moment that he was special. He could score at will if he was in the right system. So that was kind of the moment when we thought, well, this will be fun for him, because he's going to be very competitive at this sport.
Yeah, and that not only did that prove to be correct in that year, but it continued to be correct once he moved to the Empire as well. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about a moment where he was a bit established, and that is the AUDL All-Star Game, which obviously went into overtime. And you had spoken to me about making a case that Ben's block on Rowan being the best play of that game, but I want to take it into a bit of a different direction instead of just debating one play. That Rowan won the league MVP in 2018. And Ben has himself said that there is no rivalry. And obviously they both play offense as well. And now moving forward with DC in a different division, there will always be, not say there was no love lost, but they were certainly competitive teams, competitive games, but there is no personal individual rivalry between Rowan and Ben, regardless of the league MVPs. However, you and Ben has said that you tend to be the stat head of the family and the one who kind of lets him know the numbers, lets him know the stats in his ear, and then we'll call you the stat whisperer, if you will. Right. So I would say, what do you make of the stat rivalry, and what have you seen through the progression of him as an Ultimate player, at least by the numbers, and how he has compared to not only Rowan, but as you guys have navigated individual success as a family and those kind of conversations?
Right. There's a lot to unpack there, Dan, but I'll start by saying Rowan and Ben, could be brothers in the way they approach the game. They're incredibly loyal to their teammates. They play incredibly hard. They don't take time off. They're in it to win every point, every pass, every catch, every defensive, every mark, right? But they play hard, they play to win, and they love the competition of it. You can see the two of them at the end of the All-Star game. The AUDL TV cameras were still rolling as the players were all congratulating each other and hugging and huddling. And Ben and Rowan are talking about that play, and you can see them gesturing back and forth. Oh, it hit my elbow, and how did you see that? And just that friendly rivalry of two guys playing at the highest level and playing the same way, playing very honest, very loyal Ultimate. I grew up keeping baseball stats, knowing that Rod Carew was the season he almost hit 400, just got me into statistics and understanding and the joy of following a favorite player. So obviously my favorite player has been Ben in the AUDL. Here's a quick story. In 2018, Ben had a very good year, very solid year, certainly first team all AUDL. But I had done a statistical breakdown of like the 5 top statistical leaders in plus minus goals, all of the categories, and sent it to Evan Lepfler, making a case, not necessarily for Ben as the MVP, but that he was in the conversation. That's how deep into it I get at times. But that rivalry with Rowan is a healthy rivalry, right? The other major sports have had those kind of personality-driven rivalries, and then you see that on the field. 2019 was full of DC Empire close games all throughout, and then you have Rowan rising up and blocking Ben at the end of a quarter or at the end of the half in the All-Star game, and then Ben getting him back later with the block that we're referencing. But I think the statistics are important because they connect the sport to fans, right? To kids who have some time to pour over things. They love leaderboards. Who's leading in blocks? Who's this Jimmy Kittleson that's leading the league in blocks? Who is that? And then they dig more into it, and then they get a favorite player, a favorite team, and we can grow the sport in that way. I think statistics are important to that.
Yeah, and talking to all the players individually, players are obviously going to give the same answer that, each role is different, and there are players, there's especially in the game of Ultimate, because there's offense, because there's defense, there is an equity that exists amongst the team and roles and things like that. But between you and I being the broadcaster and being the parent, we can admit that stars are important in pushing a game forward, and especially the popularity of a sport as well. And you mentioned where after every Empire home game, you can go up to the players, and many of the teams around the AUDL do this as well. You can go up to the players, get signatures, meet and greets. They'll throw with some of the youngsters that are in the crowd as well. So there certainly is, after the game, moments where star power gets their recognition from a younger generation, which, as we said, is important to make fans out of the next generation. And one of the ways to do that, and we don't have ad breaks here on the Empire podcast, but this is basically, consider this an ad break here, because we're going to talk a little bit about AUDL.TV. And if there's one man who can vouch for his AUDL.TV subscription, it is you, Mr. Yacht, which is not only a great value for Ultimate fans, but the argument that you make to what AUDL.TV does provide, as far as muddy, as nasty as a game on the road might be, just the full experience. And getting the full game as well, where it's not just stop and go with whether you're watching something on Fox Sports 2 or some kind of game that you've seen just in the highlights as well.
Yeah, certainly highlight packages will get fans' attention in this YouTube, TikTok era. Quick snippets of athletic greatness are great for getting fans' interest. But once that interest is established, having a platform like AUDL.TV really allows fans to get in and nurture that passion that builds for the sport. Because I can go, if I'm inclined, I can go watch the Atlanta Hustle versus Raleigh Flyer game from 2019. Hopefully when we get this all restarted, there'll be that archive of game footage that's beyond anything that I've ever seen in Ultimate, whether it's on the college side, the club scene, the youth scene. The quality of the footage, the quality of the broadcast is incredible with AUDL TV. And if people that are listening, the folks that are listening have not experienced that, if you can watch the replay of the 2019 All-Star game, the production value of that broadcast is incredibly high and can kind of bridge that gap between Ultimate as a sport played in front of your family and friends in far-flung tournament style locations to something that you can consume on a cold winter's day in Minnesota while you watch your favorite sport and your favorite players play it all around the country is an incredible opportunity for us. I kept my AUDL TV subscription throughout the pandemic. I've used it as well as I kept it to support that effort. But I think it's just a fantastic platform for the evangelism of Ultimate around the country.
And you have watched your fair share of AUDL in the last 7 years now. So I do have to ask you, what is the best AUDL game you've seen? Because whether it was with the Winchell or the Empire, you've seen comebacks, you've seen now a championship, you've seen playoff games. Because we did talk about the lighthearted nature of the All-Star game, but having been in New York for some of those playoff games, not all of them are as friendly as the All-Star game. There is obviously competition when it comes to winning a championship. But is there one particular favorite AUDL game that you do have?
There is, Dan. I have a nostalgia for the 2018 New York Empire in DC to play the DC Breeze in the first round of the 2018 playoffs, a game that the Empire were not supposed to win because they had just gone to DC a week or two prior to that and gotten smacked down by Rowan and the Breeze, who had put them away.
Yeah, I want to mention Delrico Johnson too. Delrico Johnson was incredible in that month. In that whole month, he was awesome. But
right, that's a great call. It's not just Rowan on that team. You know, you have a lot of ballers on that DC team, and they play hard and they play as a team. So a big threat. Well, I then arranged to have my father, who's now 85 at the time, you know, in his mid 80s. I went and got him. We traveled together to DC, got a hotel, and we're going to that game. Come on, Dad, we're going to go see Ben play in a playoff game. And we went, and the weather, if the listeners aren't familiar with that game, it was played in just a start to finish torrential downpour at the DC Breeze home stadium, which was also hosting a Eritrean festival where kind of an ethnic festival where folks had come from all over the country to meet together, and it was at a side of the field. So here in this downpour, the players are playing. This was the game where no goals were scored in the fourth quarter of that game because the rain and the wind, and the players that were on the field stayed on the field and just kept slogging it out. Ben played with a plastic bag, a garbage bag under his uniform to try to keep some of his warmth in, because it was quite cold as well as wet. And the game went back and forth. The Empire got an early lead and then just shut the Breeze's any comeback attempt down. So in terms of moment and location and conditions, and then certainly outcome, it was a thrilling game to watch. I was one of maybe 20 people there, and standing outside with plastic bags over myself, to try to stay warm watching this game unfold. It was the best experience I've had. The best game I've seen would have to be the 2019 championship game. Both Dallas and New York played great games. I've heard on your podcast, as well as through other means, that the Empire offensive line played nearly flawless and needed to beat Dallas, because Dallas was counterpunching on the other side every time until Babbitt caught that end of the third quarter buzzer beater, and then Empire came out in the fourth quarter and scored to finally get a multiple goal lead. That game was seriously in question.
Yeah, and I think we've come to trust your ultimate the aficionado that you've become, because you said to me about that game in 2018, the playoff game, you called it fun, and I remember it as wet, sloppy, miserable. But as far as the stats, to go back to those, there were 5 breaks for the Empire in that game, 1915 win at Cardinal Stadium. And I also want to mention, too, that Cardinal Stadium, it's a good stadium. It's an enjoyable place to watch an Ultimate game. And I say this from someone who, for Ultimate, there are good locations and there are bad locations. And Cardinal Stadium is one of the good locations. So I can only imagine if you pick that game up and you put it at one of the we'll say poorer venues to watch an Ultimate game. And we're not just talking AUDL, we're talking beyond that as well. Everyone, I think, in the community has played at their fair share of what in the woods, wherever it may be, less favorable. But so I also want to mention too, as we wrap this up, that, and this is a little tongue in cheek as well, but you have on your pinstripes, and it's not just about the uniform, about wearing the pinstripes, but as someone from Minnesota. So I think, I was born in Pennsylvania, as people may know, but I've been in New York for over 10 years now. And I've almost, I don't say take for granted, almost indoctrinated with the idea that, okay, some of the things that are some of the New York teams, there's blue and orange, you're going to get that for whether it's Knicks or Mets or whatever. And then the Yankees, though, for especially you being a baseball fan, that's the institution, right? That's what you know of being some of the New York look. So I'm going to change the question on you just a little bit, not just the pinstripes, but when it comes to the way the Empire have basically taken their identity and said, we are New York, this is what makes us New York. From what you had known from afar, not only the Empire, but of what it means to be a New Yorker, how do you think the Empire represents what you saw of New York? And you could even, I'll give you the layup here, that you could just say pinstripes on the jersey is one thing, but what else about that New York identity have you got to know with the Empire?
Well, you think about the broad shoulders of New York, ready to take on the world, right? Standing tall and proud. They're in kind of a position of strength and dominance. And the rest of the country knows that, doesn't necessarily like it, but I love a winner, and New York is a winner. The city is a winner. The culture there breeds competition, breeds that, hey, winners, cream rises, right, in New York. So you look at the team, and you got big, broad shoulders. You got Jeff Babbitt, you have Ben Jagt, you have fellows that are big and broad, but you have Ben Katz who maneuvers through any situation with fluidity and surprises his opponent by where he shows up and how clever he is with how he does it. And then you have the grace of Harper Garvey's outside in flick that goes out of bounds and settles in Connor Klein's hands right in stride in the end zone is a thing of beauty. So yeah, I can wax poetic about New York. I love the city. I've traveled there as a kid, as an adult, and now as an older adult. I love it for all those reasons. And when a sport like like Ultimate and the AUDL's representation of it wants to appropriate some of the symbolism from long established sports, whether it's baseball, football, whatever. And when they adopted the pinstripes into their home jersey, I just think that's a great move, because it ties them to New York in a symbolic way that many people recognize and understand. I am not a Yankees fan, not even kind of I'm much more a Mets fan than a Yankees fan, if I'm even that. But
Johan Santana. Thank you for Johan Santana. Yeah, no hitters.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
One Met, no hitter.
Him. Right. So anyway, the pinstripes represent kind of what New York is, building a tradition around Ultimate and around being the best organization. The Stevens are incredible in their commitment to the sport, to the league, and to their team. And they embody that in something as simple as the design of the kit, to how they run the team and who's on that team, who's leading that team. I think it embodies New York very well. And I think it's great for the league to have a strong New York team that everybody can look to knock off. If somebody knocks them off in 2021, they're that makes the sport stronger, which I'm not rooting for, of course.
Well, yeah, it's almost a reminder that this season, whether you're on AUDL.TV or whether if somehow there are able to be fans in the seats as well. So wherever it may be or wherever you're watching from, again, AUDL.TV, regardless of the times that we are in, is always a good option as well. And as we wrap up I was about to give the outro, but we're going to just quickly, I guess I should throw a question to Ben Jagt, who, if for those watching on video, you got you get it before the audio, because here he comes. So Ben, I'll ask you, we got to talk business, right? How's training and how are you gearing up for the 2021 season? I was about to do a little preview here.
I've been taking some time off letting my body heal, but recently, about the past month, I started running the biggest sledding hill we have around our neighborhood in Minneapolis. So I've been doing that it was nice weather, and now it's snowy. So I've been sledding down and sprinting up with the dogs.
How do you think your dad did on the podcast? I mean, that's really what stats would you give him as far as accuracy, as far as word per minute? I don't know if you were keeping track.
Yeah, if this was like a Madden rating, it'd probably be like 83, like room for improvement, but solid for a first time.
Right.
Well, I think we can let the listeners decide. Of course, we would love to have more time with Ben Jagt, but I promise he will be back here on the New York Empire podcast. Maybe not the next one, but in the near future as well, because we're excited to gear up for the 2021 season. So I want to mainly thank Dan Jagt, but also thanks, Ben, for joining us as well. And Dan, thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, Dan, good luck with the podcast. Love what you're doing, and thank you for having me.
And thanks to you, the listeners and our viewers here, as this wraps up another edition of the New York Empire podcast. From the entire New York Empire family and producer Al, I'm Dan Hilton. We'll talk to you next week or in the near future.